The rain had not stopped for 3 days. The streets of Boston were flooded with muddy water, and the night was cold enough to send a shiver through even the warmest coats. Beneath a dim streetlight, a man sat curled up on the pavement, his thin jacket soaked through, his body trembling from the chill. His hair was matted, his skin pale, and his stomach growled louder than the storm overhead. He hadn't eaten in 2 days. His lips trembled as he whispered the same words again and again to the passers-by, who hurried past without looking. Just one meal, please, just one meal. Most people ignored him, clutching their umbrellas tighter, stepping faster to escape the rain. To them, he was invisible, just another homeless man in a city too busy to care. But for him, every ignored plea was another wound. Hunger was cruel, but being unseen was far more painful. His eyes stung with tears as he wondered how life had dragged him so far down, from a man with pride and steady work to someone begging strangers for a single bite of food. Back into Next Morning Right. If you believe in kindness, compassion, and second chances, take a moment right now to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Tales. Together, we can remind the world of the power of love and humanity. That night, the man, his name was David, tried to stay awake, his frail body curled against the freezing wind. The wet cardboard beneath him gave little comfort, and each splash of water from passing cars drenched him further. Looking toward the glowing windows of a nearby diner, he could smell the faint trace of burgers and fries. His heart ached, not for riches, not for miracles, but simply for one plate of warm food, just one meal. Once, David had been a construction worker. He'd had a modest apartment, bills paid, and dreams for the future. But when the company he worked for went bankrupt, everything unraveled. He searched desperately for other work, but injuries and bad luck followed him. Savings disappeared. His apartment was gone. Friends drifted away. And eventually, the dignity he once carried slipped through his hands, leaving him with nothing but desperation. That same rainy night, Emily, a young nurse finishing a late shift at Massachusetts General Hospital, hurried down the sidewalk. She was exhausted, her scrubs damp, her body craving rest. She almost passed the man without noticing. Almost. But then she heard that faint, fragile voice cutting through the storm. Just one meal, please. Emily turned her head and saw him. Hunched, shivering, eyes filled with a hollow despair she couldn't ignore. She had seen pain in hospital rooms, but something about his silent suffering pierced her heart. Without thinking twice, she ducked into the all-night diner, ordered a hot plate of chicken and mashed potatoes, and carried it back out. When she placed the meal into David's trembling hands, his eyes widened as if she had given him the world. He whispered, "Thank you," again and again, tears streaming down his face, before devouring the food with shaking hands. Each bite seemed to bring life back into his body. Emily stood there in the rain, watching silently, her throat tight with emotion. To her, it was just a meal. To him, it was survival, it was hope. What Emily didn't realize that night was that her single act of compassion would not end there. It would spark a chain of events that would change both of their lives forever. The next morning, Emily couldn't stop thinking about him. On her way home the following evening, she passed the same corner, half expecting him to be gone. But David was there, sitting weakly, his hands folded as though he had been waiting for someone to believe in him again. She brought him breakfast that day, then lunch, then dinner. So it became a routine. Each day after her shift, she would bring food, wrapped in foil, and each day his eyes lit up with gratitude. But Emily knew food alone wouldn't save him. His body was weak, his clothes torn, and his spirit broken. She gently asked him about his past and learned of the factory that had closed, the jobs he'd lost, the spiral into homelessness. It wasn't laziness or addiction that had dragged him here. It was life's cruel timing. That realization deepened her resolve. One evening, Emily reached out to a friend who owned a small cafe in the city. She pleaded with him to give David a chance. Any chance, even if it was just washing dishes. At first, her friend resisted. You can't just pull someone off the street and trust them in a kitchen, he argued. But Emily didn't give up. She reminded him that everyone deserves at least one chance, the same way David had once needed one meal. Her persistence paid off. A week later, David started as a dishwasher. The first day he showed up, he wept, thanking everyone around him. He scrubbed those dishes with more care than anyone had ever seen, staying late, working tirelessly. For the first time in months, he had soap on his hands instead of dirt, and a roof over his head instead of a street corner. Slowly, step by step, David rebuilt himself. Months passed. He moved from dishwasher to kitchen helper, learning how to prepare meals. His work ethic and gratitude impressed everyone around him. Customers noticed his kindness. Coworkers respected him. And Emily never stopped checking in, reminding him of his worth. Bit by bit, the hollow man she'd first seen in the rain grew stronger, steadier, and hopeful again. Then, 1 year later, the miracle happened. The cafe owner, moved by David's dedication, decided to retire. Instead of selling the cafe to a stranger, he offered it to David for a price so low it was almost a gift. With Emily's help and a small community loan, David signed the papers with trembling hands. The man who had once begged for one meal now owned a cafe where he could serve hundreds. But David made a vow. No one hungry would ever be turned away. If someone came in and whispered the same words he once had, just one meal, please, they would be fed free of charge, no questions asked. Word spread quickly. Soon, the cafe became more than just a business. It became a refuge. College students struggling to afford meals, homeless men and women, families between jobs. They all found kindness at David's cafe. And others in the community began donating food and money to support his mission. Emily would sometimes sit in a corner booth, watching with tears in her eyes as David carried trays of steaming food to people who looked at him the way he had once looked at her, with gratitude, with hope, with life. He never forgot that night, that storm, or the woman who stopped when everyone else walked past. Emily didn't just give me food, he often said. She gave me back my life, my faith, and my dignity. Back in Index Pointing Right, if this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Tales. Your support keeps stories of hope and humanity alive. Speech balloon before we end, here's a special request. Comment below with the words, "One meal can change a life," if you believe in the power of compassion. Because sometimes it doesn't take wealth, power, or grand miracles to change the world. Sometimes it only takes the courage to stop, notice the unseen, and answer the quiet, desperate cry of a soul whispering, "Just one meal, please."